I am Sefton Boyars. In this session, Bill Allen and I will discuss interviewing for auditors. Before I get into the main content of interviewing, I should make sure that you understand something of our backgrounds. While Bill and I were both CPAs, we are both retired, we spent our careers as government auditors, primarily for one of the many inspectors general in the federal departments. There is a significant difference between auditing as the representative of an Office of Inspector General, OIG, and performing as a CPA in the private world. I recall in my first auditing class in college, the instructor said that the ideal result of an audit was a clean report. That may be the case for an auditor in private practice, but it is certainly not the ideal result for an Inspector General. While all auditors are expected to produce fair and objective reports, the Inspectors General were created to improve programs and ferret out fraud and abuse. The OIGs have limited resources and therefore spend their audit efforts where problems are likely to exist. If an OIG were to issue clean reports on a regular basis, questions would be raised as to whether the Inspector General was completing his or her mission. Before going any further, Bill and I should introduce ourselves. I'm Sefton Boyars. I've had two full careers. I was a government auditor for 35 years, including 16 years as the Regional Inspector General for Audit for the U.S. Department of Education. My region covered the 8 westernmost states of the U.S. and the Pacific. The Pacific included the state of Hawaii and the various U.S. territories and former territories in the Pacific, such as Guam and American Samoa. In my career, I audited every type of organization you can think of: state and local governments, universities, non-profits, for-profit entities, and federal agencies. I retired in 1996, and for the next 23 years I conducted training in the areas of government grants and contracts and government audits. I also conducted peer reviews of many government audit agencies. In addition, I have written a number of online texts with my companion for this session. Those texts discuss government auditing and the rules covering federal grants.
And I'm Bill Allen. I have a bit over 30 years of federal audit and government contracting experience. I served 15 years as the Regional Inspector General for Audit for the U.S. Department of Education in the Midwest. We were based in Kansas City, Missouri. This means the region was mostly wide open spaces with a smattering of scattered cities from St. Louis to Seattle. I was responsible for managing audits of educational and health-related organizations, both public and private, and state and local government entities. Over the years, I participated in numerous projects designed to improve the efficiency and effectiveness within the OIG community. I worked as an instructor for the USDA Graduate School and for the Association of Government Accountants. Government audits almost always involve reviewing activities for compliance. In addition, government auditors are often looking at whether the various processes are efficient and effective. As a result, government auditors spend more time interviewing managers and employees than CPAs do in a typical financial audit. Therefore, it should be helpful for CPAs to understand the extent of interviewing in a government environment when they conduct single audits. They can also benefit from that understanding when they're asked to review the efficacy of an organization's processes or to audit for fraud. During this presentation, we plan to address the following topics: why interview and whom to interview, types of interviews, preparing for and conducting interviews, the difference between interviews and interrogations, and dealing with difficult interviewees.
We interview people at the auditee for a number of reasons. Primarily, we want to obtain an understanding of the organization. We need to clarify our comprehension of the processes and confirm that they're actually occurring. In addition, we want to verify that the processes that are supposed to be in effect are fully implemented. Also, the interviews enable us to obtain insights and understandings of the people we talk with. There are many other benefits of conducting interviews. We can get a feel for the entity by listening to voice inflections and watching for nonverbal signals. A great deal of communication is nonverbal. We will discuss nonverbal signals later in this session. When interviewing, the auditor can often obtain important background information about the organization, its managers, and its employees. The worst interview I ever saw was when an auditor had a list of questions, almost all of which required a yes or no answer. She asked them and kept her head down, just recording the answers. Later, we will talk about the importance of having two people at every interview. One to conduct the interview, one to record the answers. The person asking the questions should always be concentrating on the person being interviewed and thinking about the responses and any nonverbal signals being sent. If an answer leads to an extra question, that question should be asked right away. Spontaneous questions can often provide much useful information, and always be alert to data that pops up during the interview. In my experience, many employees want to have the auditor ask more questions about an issue that has been bothering them. You need to be sensitive to that situation.
We normally want to interview persons at all levels involved in the organization. Specifically, we will interview executives, managers, supervisors, workers, internal auditors, and others, for example, recipients. In general, we will interview them in the order above. We start with the persons who have the most extensive knowledge of the entity and work our way down to those persons who know more and more about the specific nitty-gritty of the operations. The one group we may interview earlier than their spot on this list are the internal auditors. We can interview them at almost any time in the process. In fact, I often like to talk to them very early in the process. I will explain why when we get to that group. We will discuss the various items that we will be emphasizing as we cover each of the groups we plan to interview. However, we will first discuss the questions that we will have for each and every person. In every interview, we always ask whether the person had any concerns about the audit we were conducting or the interview itself. We found that asking this at the beginning of the interview helped relax the interviewee. It also allowed us to discuss what authority we had to conduct the audit, the reasons for the audit, what might be the consequences of the audit, and whether that person's answers would be disclosed to persons higher up within the organization. At the end of each interview, we also asked whether the person had any concerns about the organization or its operations. As we were government auditors, we also asked if the person was aware of any significant noncompliance with government requirements. Our last question was always whether the person had any knowledge of fraud within the entity. In this case, we did not ask whether it was significant fraud. Almost all fraud is significant. Needless to say, that last question was almost always answered with a no. However, occasionally we did get an initial hedging of the answer. When we followed up, we did sometimes find that there was a concern. Sometimes the fraud was always being dealt with, but it was very important that we knew about it, so we wouldn't be embarrassed later because we were unaware of it.
When I would teach interviewing, I emphasized those last two questions. However, my words didn't always have the effect I wanted, so I created a case problem to help me make my point. The case problem involved an audit interview of a for-profit entity. The federal auditors had one set of information, and the auditee had a different set. On the auditee's set, the relatively new CFO of the auditee had just found that a person on the federal contract had been charging the contract for a significant amount of his personal expenses. The CFO planned to call the federal agency immediately, but first he spoke with the CEO. The CEO was aghast. The same problem had occurred 4 years ago. The feds discovered it, and the contract was terminated, and the organization was barred for federal contracts for 3 years. This was the first federal contract awarded since then. The CEO was afraid that if the federal feds found out that the same problem had recurred, the organization would be disbarred again and probably go out of business. So they decided to try and deflect any questions, but they wouldn't lie during the interview that was coming. They anticipated that they could repay all funds taken over the next year if the problem was not revealed.